Thank you, Ruta. Yes, I can see this question, and I will answer on the first part of this question about why should a public institution be interested in the Integrity Academy. And as I already mentioned previously, maybe 10 years ago it wouldn't be possible to talk about Integrity Academy because we wouldn't have any participants, any institutions interested in this activity. But now general environment in the country, in Europe, in the world is changing, and inspiration to create anti-corruption environment is getting higher and higher. And as already I said, we have good examples, institutions, what already created anti-corruption environment, and they speak about that loudly. And your neighbor already created anti-corruption environment, normally you can be asked why it is not done in your organization, because all public service is one organism, and leaders communicated each to other, and leaders have their bosses, and etc. And this all organisms should be like one movement. And I think this general feeling, general environment, changing of anti-corruption environment in the country, in the world, in the Europe, of course, corruption perception index, what we can see, other researches we do in Lithuania, all these circumstances make the Transparency Academy possibilities to reach successfulness and to do their work. My answer would be that, and Ruth, I would ask you to answer about participants.
Okay, thank you. So concerning participants, the question was how many participants do we have? Before answering this question, I have to define define how we count and name our participants, because we have two groups of them. That is the participants who just want to take part in the webinars, to listen to them, to share their experiences, but they don't have a intensive training program. So every webinar has its own number of listeners and of participants. So the last webinar we had was on public procurement, because of course public procurement is a very never-ending topic from the point of corruption. So we had very many registered and interested listeners. That was about 670, something around that. So for a small country like Lithuania, it's a lot. In other webinars earlier, we had maybe 300, 200 listeners and so on, according to the topic. And the other part of the participants, that is who we are called the real participants, these are the organizations who expressed their willingness to go through the stages of the academy, to be evaluated, to train at the academy, to receive the expertise from the mentors, and afterwards be evaluated again. So it's a more intensive agenda for them, like a real university. So we have around last number I was informed about was 24 of them who expressed their willingness to take part in this more intensive way, and also have almost all of them have already signed agreements with us to take part in the academy. Of course, it's all, everything is a soft law, but still we have agreements so that we express our willingness, and they express their willingness to take part and to take it seriously. So, so such would be an answer about about the intensity of our training. And a couple of questions which arrived. Maybe I will try to join them, because a couple of questions is about the ISO standard of anti-corruption, how the training of at the academy and creating a environment of integrity correlates with ISO integrity, or with the ISO anti-corruption standard. So maybe Mr. Aurimas can say something on that, as you have great experience both in creating an environment of integrity and also of corporate management. So maybe you can help us with that.
Yes, surely. So I would say that even if it's a quite new standard, I mean, ISO 37001, it's, I believe it was issued in 2016. This standard is a guideline to which companies, doesn't matter private or public ones, should adhere and follow if they really want to have a working system. Of course, as with every systems, you can make it purely bureaucratic, purely, you know, paper ones. So, and that's, of course, is a way. I'm not sure if it's a good way, but if you want to have a certificate and to proudly show that you have it and you are certified, that might be an option. And alas, I have to say that some companies are following this way. But the real advantage of the standard is really following those guidelines and making the system working, making it effective. So if you do it not just to have a paper on a wall, a certificate, but if you want to have a real working system, I would really advise to take that standard, look into it, and of course, not just blindly follow it. You can, and I think should adopt it according to your organization needs. And for example, in our corporation, because it's a huge corporation with according to Lithuanian standards, of course, and because we have 20 plus companies under the umbrella of our holding, so we had to be creative, and we had to make anti-corruption system amended slightly and adopted to our needs. And what I mean, it's we have like two highway streets. We have centralized anti-corruption measures for all companies, and then a specific ones for those companies who are evaluated to be slightly to have a slightly more risk of corruption. So I hope that answers your question. But if you have any other details to be known, just please ask. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. As I have seen, there are some parallel discussion in our chat, and Sergejus, he has already received a question about perception of corruption in Lithuanian society and how these perceptions are changed with initiatives such as our Integrity Academy. As I see, Sergejus has already answered shortly in writing. Do you have any comments, Sergejus, which you would like to add aloud to that, what you have already written?
Right, Ruta. So I'll be brief, because then maybe that will stir even more discussion. I think, you know, a lot of discussions all around the world about what comes first, chicken or egg kind of a discussions. When you have a conversation about the perception of corruption and the experience with corruption and how to change that, it's not a chicken and egg conversation anymore. We thought it could be, but it's clear that just plain communication about why transparency is good and corruption is bad does not change people's perception. people need to experience transparency. They need to know for sure that their environment is not corrupt. They need to be able to touch it. So we really need to, if you can put it this way, sort of make transparency and anti-corruption more democratic, right? It has to be everybody's. And so in that sense, that's what we've been suffering from. I think it's been a very expert issue. And of course, politicians have caught on, and you know, they now use the narrative that corruption is bad and transparency is good. But what we see now is precisely the opposite effect of what I think we wanted. People don't necessarily trust that message anymore. And that's why, for instance, in Lithuania, with all the tools that we have, and I think it's actually very similar across the board in the region, if not in the EU, people think that decision-making is becoming more closed off. Large interest groups have much more power and much greater sway than a general member of the public. And that's a huge problem. That's a message to all of our democratic societies, which we need to tackle. We need to open up politics. We need to make sure that a good politician is an accountable and a transparent politician, but then that has to start somewhere. And that's why I would argue that it starts with experiences. And initiatives like the Integrity Academy, other initiatives like participatory budgeting, for instance, right? When you decide at least on a part of your municipal budget or your school's budget is key, yeah? Otherwise, it would be very difficult to convince people that what you mean is actually true. So that's what I meant when I was speaking about trust. That's what I meant when I was I'm speaking about the chicken and egg situations and why this one is really not that.
Okay, thank you so much. We have more questions arriving, and the next question is a very down-to-earth question, I would say. And this is a question: what can employees of a public institution do if they feel that their bosses, ministers, let's say, or directors are corrupt and the institution does not want to be transparent in decision-making? Of course, all of us have views on these questions, but maybe I can ask Mr. Elanas Jablonskas to answer these questions, because now he is minister of, excuse me, vice minister, but I think you could be a minister also, having in mind your experiences, because Mr. Elanas has been a head of immunity in Lithuanian police for a long period of time. So maybe you have some advice for those who feel that their bosses are corrupt.
Okay, thank you, Ruta, for this very interesting question. Of course, it's a very good question for all of us, because sometimes we are afraid of to inform the institution, especially investigative service, or we don't want to be whistleblowers. And this law in Lithuania we have, and we now in this ministry we're working on new redaction, which will be more better than it was before. But first of all, we must be honestly for ourselves. So if we working with a boss who are corrupt, of course, if we will be silenced, the problem didn't disappear. We must do sharing it. We can be a whistleblower, we can be anonymous letter writing, or but we can't do the criminal things and be the boss in one part. We must do talking, we must do sharing, because the government must encourage not only the public but in the private sector to participate in this anti-corruption activity. No, we must do exchange not only good but also and bad practice, analyze the problems and learn from our mistakes, find the resources, human resources, because we often give up this problem and have no desire to change. We must recognize our mistakes, and only by doing what we can make conclusions and make right decisions. All institutions must give both human and financial resources to solving these problems. The current government intends to pay practical attention to corruption prevention and have a leadership in this area. And was mentioned before, if we will be silent and we close our eyes to these problems, the problem doesn't disappear. And when a lot of people started talking about the corruption inside the institution, corruption about his high rank officers or his bosses, of course, a lot of information, special investigation service or anti-corruption divisions get this information, and they must to starting to solve these problems. And we have very good choice. For example, Lithuanian part, Lithuanian police part. We have the Lithuanian police was most corrupt institution, and it was 10 years ago. Nobody can believe that can be changes, some changes in this system. But from the leadership for the implementing the anti-corruption divisions inside the system, now we have a very good results, and the trust of this institution is the highest of all in organizations. It's the second part of trust in all the institutions. And what the changes was from leadership, but bad bosses, corruption bosses, of course, disappeared from that system. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your reply. And now I see one hand raised. So our director wants to add something to what has been said by dear Vice Minister. So please.
Thank you, Ruta. This question was interesting for me because I wouldn't like to talk about these employees and how to act in particular situation when they have information about wrongdoings of bosses and etc. But I would like to speak about Integrity Academy and participants of this academy. We discussed before launching this project that this academy will start work with participants from the point when participants already have political will to build anti-corruption environment. And the most difficult thing is to create political will to build anti-corruption environment, and much easier to help to build anti-corruption environment. And this question is related with Integrity Academy, and very good question. And we should discuss about how to engage all leaders to build anti-corruption environment. This is a difficult question, and as I told before, maybe all environment should create uncomfortable feeling for leaders not doing that. And when political will already exist, it is already easy to do actions related with anti-corruption. Thank you, Ruta.
Thank you for your interruption, and we have arrived with more down-to-earth questions, which are not all very, how to say, they are smart, and they how to say, encourage us to think a bit harder what to say, not only very nice and bright things, because the question is about not so bright things. So do you also have some non-success stories? It's always very kind to speak about success stories, but our listeners want to hear about non-success stories. It would be interesting for them to hear what has worked and what has not worked, where and why. So maybe it's a question for all panelists. So maybe someone can say something on non-success stories, which encourage us to seek for the ways to create more success stories. So anyone from our panel?
I would like to ask maybe Darius to join us, because Darius has a very long experience like integrity officer in transport sector, and he was creator of changes now we have in transport sector in Lithuania. Dario, please share your experience in that. What mistakes you did, and your suggestion would be for other our participants in this forum.
Thank you, Žydrūnas and Ruta, for the question. I can start to share our stories, and I think that bad stories, it's a small pause in your activity. It's not the finish, because you always can follow forward to change bad stories to good stories. And from my personal experience, when I had been working in transport and communication ministry, I had a project to help with audit and anti-corruption system in our ministry, in the Ministry of Education. Really, we had a lot of signs about corruption, about risks in public procurement in this ministry. We collected a good team of experts from different fields who are really experienced in integrity and transparency. And we started to work with educational ministry, and we did huge job. We audited all ministry, we audited organizations under the ministry, and we brought the report with a lot of recommendations and problems. We shared this report with law enforcement agencies and, of course, with the team of the ministry. And our wish, our will was that this audit will change the situation. But it didn't change the situation for that period. And this bad story, it finished with the end of ministry team, and then new ministry entered, and it all the possibility to use this work, to use this audit, and to implement this recommendation. So my suggestion is never stop trying to do the things the best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So maybe you could, Darius, continue, because the next question I had in store for you is about our Integrity Academy and its relations with audit and auditing at public auditing at our academy. I'm not quite sure if I'm not absolutely sure if I got the question quite right, because the question is rather short. But as I understand, the author of the question wanted to know how the audit can interact with creating public integrity, and also how it can be introduced in the program of our Integrity Academy. So that is, as you have experience with incorporating with audits, and also in Lithuania, the highest audit institution, the state control, is also, it reports also to the President of the Republic. So maybe you can you have some views about integrity and audit, if you could continue.
Yes, surely. So I see the audit like effective instrument to help identify the risks in the organization activity. So if you want to create really effective risk management system, you need to know in which areas it is possibility to appear the risks. So audit should be inside organization to check your procedures, to check that procedures are really implemented, and to collect evidences that this system is really working. So audit is a partner, it's a reliable partner in the team who is responsible for creating transparency and integrity in the organization. So it is really necessary to have not only one umbrella of the protection in the organization. So one umbrella should be created inside the organization, but other umbrellas also necessary time to time to use, and external audits. It is also a good standard to assist and to check the anti-corruption system of the organization. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. And one more question arriving, that is with a COVID-19 context in mind, how can the group adjust collectively and be flexible to new challenges? Could the academy take a risk-based approach? So, as I understand, the question is about how can our academy help our participants to respond to the specific corruption risks related to arising from the situation related to COVID-19. So maybe Aurimas has something to say to that as an expert of our academy, and also afterwards maybe Mr. Žydrūnas can add something as as Special Investigation Service works hard with risks related to COVID. So please.
Thank you, Ruta. Actually, I don't have here much to say, because as an expert or a mentor on in an Integrity Academy, we use the virtual, conferences, and up to this point, we don't see any risks related to COVID-19 and the Integrity Academy. So overall, we see risks related to COVID-19, and that is kind of procurement, and it could be risky because the procedures that should be complied with sometimes are not taken seriously because of the need of make the procurement quick. So that would be my short answer, but I think if we're talking about COVID-19 and Integrity Academy and the risks related to that, I see none here. So thank you.
Thank you for your answer. And now some views from the side of Special Investigation Service are awaiting us.
Good question, and very important today to talk about risks we didn't have before, but we are with these risks now. And Alison, you asked this question, and you gave idea for us. For example, Integrity Academy is a new project in Lithuania, and we used this academy, this platform, for sharing this experience we already have. But this academy, this platform could be like workshop place for discussing new tools with experts about what we could do in the future to manage risks we previously didn't have. Thank you for question, and thank you for idea for our Integrity Academy.
Thank you so much. The next question is about success stories. We have been asked to talk about non-success stories, and now it's time for success stories, aside from the Integrity Academy, of course, about which we have already talked a lot. So success stories. So maybe Maybe Sergejus could name something what he would consider a success story from the point of view of non-governmental organizations.
Oh, Ruta, and I was actually ready to speak about failures because, you know, I come from an organization that fails constantly. We fail so much that we don't think it's failure anymore. Because, you know, like, how do you persuade people to do certain things? Like, it can be 100% success rate. We actually have calculated that with anything that we do, we have a rule of 10. And that is that basically, if we do any transparency initiative and we offer a certain set of standards and norms that people can basically get their sort of organizations up to, when we do that exercise on the scale from 1 to 100, the level increases by about 10%. So there's the jump in 10% in terms of accountability and transparency. And surprisingly, it's the same rule when it comes to our public advocacy work. 1 out of 10 our public advocacy proposals usually sticks, sort of like makes it its way through. That's probably not a bad success rate. In any case, we don't really have a lot of other data to compare because, as you know yourself, this data-driven approach is very new to anti-corruption. And as a matter of fact, when we speak about successes, I would like to stress this one in particular. I'm actually very happy that we in Lithuania are seeking to create this step change when it comes to how to deal with corruption and transparency. And, you know, internally, we have a lot of discussions and we often are very critical of various things that happen within our country. But all in all, I think events like this give us an opportunity to reflect from the outside and understand where we really stand within the region. And I am happy to say that we have often the newest data when it comes to corruption prevention. We have really interesting initiatives that others can learn from. And of course, I would like to use this platform to encourage our dear colleagues to get in touch with us at Transparency International, with you and everybody else. I hope it doesn't sound too pretentious, because I think what we're learning here in Lithuania is that it's important to start small. You know, you asked me about a success story. I think that's our success story. We now understand that perhaps we fell victim to this idea that, well, corruption is huge. It's all it's everywhere. And then we need to think of a nuclear weapon to tackle it. Well, it probably is not the way. Probably we need to be flexible, agile. We need to think of minimum sort of effort that we can put into something just to test it. Yeah, so minimal viable products. That's what we need to think of. We need to be able to quickly fail, to reinvent ourselves, and that is the only way you can actually succeed on this sort of anti-corruption road. And because we have pretty much every single anti-corruption monitoring institution that I can think of in Lithuania, we also have a wealth of experience to draw from as to what has worked and what hasn't. And as a matter of fact, I think the Integrity Academy is a very good platform to test even more of these approaches. When it comes to COVID-19, Alison, I think, had a good point. I just answered in the chat box, because you know, within TI, we discussed that a lot. Will things become better over the next 10 years, or will they become worse? Will the onset of COVID-19 and this greater sort of split in terms of access to power, right, empower people, or will actually empower the ones that are already with a lot of power to act? So that's something which is up in the air, and I hope that I've answered your question.
Okay, thank you for your insight into what is a success story and what isn't. So maybe other participants, our panelists, have some ideas what could be named as a success story. I see that Darius has something to add about success.
Yes, thank you, Ruth. I can add to a successful story from the side of Integrity Academy, creating methodology. This is one of the first goal we found for ourselves, but when we started Integrity Academy, we need to create effective tool how to measure the organizations, how to measure the transparency and integrity within the organization. And it was really good that our experts from different fields, from public sector, from private sector, from non-organizational sector, they come together to sit around one table and they created a methodology which is really, really important to continue our Integrity Academy activity. Thanks.
Okay, so now as we are coming closer to our scheduled end of our session, and also as I see that we have almost run out of time, and also almost run out of questions from the audience. So maybe anybody from the panelists want to add something from their side, what has not been asked or what has not been discussed in detail enough, what you might see relevant to the audience. Maybe someone has to add something.
Yes, Ruta, please. I have here a question from anonymous attendee. Oh, I think it's answered already. I think it was a question about the merits, or yes, it's here. So why should a public institution be interested in the Integrity Academy? We're not strictly a public institution, we're a business one, but I think I can answer this question, of course, from our view, from corporation view. So I think the value of being Integrity Academy partner is at least twofold. When you reach the stage, I mean, any company, any institution, but of course I have in mind our group. So when you reach the stage where you consider it to be really good at the matter, it is very difficult then to maintain that level for a longer time. So for us actually to be a mentors or partners in Integrity Academy does not simply mean that we are sharing or just exchanging the knowledge and experience. For us, it necessarily means that we have to move forward. We have to educate ourselves. We have to create probably new perspectives how anti-corruption awareness could be promoted. And of course, we understand, and I understand, it's kind of maybe a bit of a selfish cause. And we also look then to the other side. And we really seek to help others to develop effective systems that could lead to better corruption management in all our country and maybe in the region. And of course, I'm not going to explain here in details how the benefits of better corruption management closes the gap of social inequity, or how it benefits economy. But thanks to Integrity Academy, we as a group can educate our business partners, and we can clearly state what we expect from them and why we expect such a transparent behavior from them. So I think here is a common interest. I mean, being mentor and being partner and being a member of Integrity Academy, being a listener, or that a sponge which soaks up the knowledge and the experience. It's a really beneficial one for both sides. For that which gives lessons and necessarily has to pass the learning by itself, and to those who are listeners. So that would be my answer. Why should business and public institutions integrated or be a members of Integrity Academy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your explanation. And I see one more hand raised. So 2 hands raised. But so maybe Žydrūnas raising his hand first. So please.
Thank you, Ruta. And at the end of our discussion, I would emphasize 3 things what could be important in creating anti-corruption environment, and maybe it could be called like success story or reasons for success story. It first of all would be the right people in the right places, right position. It's very important to have right people in right positions. Second thing important is, like Darius said, never stop. It is be active and be active in creating anti-corruption environment. And the third thing is very important to talk about that. To talk about that, and like Sergejus already mentioned, that people sometimes do not know what changes were done, but we should invite them to try new things, new changes, new rules, and to obtain their experience. Like Sergej, you said about experience, not about only knowledge or news, but people should experience new world, new procedures, new possibilities, and to create their opinion about how big corruption is in the country. So, right people in the right place, never stop and talking about. Thank you for this discussion.
Thank you so much for the thesis, for moving on with integrity. And I see that Sergejus has something to add, so please.
Yes, if I may. You know, Žydrūnai, I was like, oh no, I want you to be the last one. But then I realized that maybe it's okay. It's okay if I say a couple of words as well at the end. I was just thinking, I understand we have about 100 people in the panel, and you know, I come from Transparency International. It's a public advocacy organization. And some of you might think, well, what's wrong with you, Sergej? Like, aren't you supposed to be critical of what the government does? And why are you such a big fan? And, you know, are you sure that that's the way you should go about it? And, you know, I'm a fan of the Integrity Academy as an approach. And I think that's something which I want to leave you with as well. I think the times of this liberal economics approach, sort of political science approach to anti-corruption as a unique way, as the only way to approach this issue, are ending. Not because these are bad disciplines, it's just that there's more at the table. And, you know, I say that as someone who also now sort of is doing a PhD in anti-corruption. And you can see that anti-corruption literature simply cannot answer all of the questions the way we've been approaching anti-corruption. And that's why I'm so happy that we take the best that we have in Lithuania, and that is a lot of data and increasingly more data, a lot of anti-corruption experience. And we create an anti-corruption lab setting, because Integrity Academy to me is an anti-corruption laboratory where we test and where we will be able to test. And we're brave enough to understand that that's the only way to go forward. And we're also happy to be at the forefront of this anti-corruption narrative. That's why I was so excited when my colleagues at the Special Investigation Service decided to have this panel alongside with everybody else attending. And that's why I really hope that you will be in touch and you know, tell us where we will fail, give us a few ideas what we can pursue here. And perhaps, you know, we can tell you in a year or so whether it really works or not, so that you can try it out in your own home countries. I hope, you know, I haven't offered too much for the Integrity Academy to take on, Žydrūnai, Darius, Ruta, but, you know, I was here then, so I did that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for your comments, for your finalizing maybe comments. And as I see, we have more or less answered all the questions. We have some suggestions about renaming our academy. We will have them in mind, but the last question is about, do we think that our Integrity Academy should be called Integrity Academy of Lithuania? A very provocative question, I would say, because we are thinking that our Integrity Academy, as time goes by and we gain more experience, could expand both to private sector in Lithuania and maybe later on to our neighboring countries. So we won't rename our academy because we have very expansive plans for the future, but thank you for the suggestions. We will have in mind it. So everyone, our panelists, our listeners, our auditorium, thank you all for being with us, for listening, for talking and asking straight questions. So thank you all. And as I see, we have run out of time already and covered the main topics. So thank you all, and I hope to see you in future events under the umbrella of the OECD, which is our greatest partner. So
and
thank you all.
Can I send the main message to everybody who listens?
Of course, yes.
Of course.
Sure.
So, corruption, it's a crime, yes, but if it becomes a work to every day, to taking bribes, to abuse of office, it becomes the foundation of state demolition. And we can lose the trust from society. So we can't do that. We must be working on that. So the last message for me.
Sure, it was like a warning for all of us that as we have success stories, we shouldn't forget the threats also. So thank you for the reminder, which was very at a good time and at a good place. So thank you once more. And if someone has to add something, you are welcome. And if not, so see you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.